Let's talk about multiplying complex numbers in trig form. We'll let our complex numbers be z1, which will be equal to r1 cosine theta 1 plus I sine theta 1. And we'll let z2 equal r2 cosine theta 2 plus I sine theta 2. So we're going to see what happens when we take their product. So I'll have z1 times z2 equals, and let's just take the product of these two. r1 cosine theta 1 plus I sine theta 1 times this number, which is r2 cosine theta 2 plus I sine theta 2. Now let's just rearrange a little bit. We're going to put the the magnitudes of these numbers first. Those are the r values. So we have r1 times r2, and then we'll multiply cosine theta 1 plus I sine theta 1 by cosine theta 2 plus I sine theta 2. Now multiplying these together will feel a lot like multiplying binomials. We FOIL it out, right? So r1 times r2, and now here we go. We have cosine theta 1 times cosine theta 2. Next, we have cosine theta 1 times I sine theta 2. So we have I cosine theta 1 sine theta 2. Next, we have I sine theta 1 times cosine theta 2. So we have I sine theta 1 cosine theta 2. And for our last term, we have I sine theta 1 times I sine theta 2. I don't know if I'm running out of room over here, so I'm just going to drop down here just a little bit. So we have plus I squared sine theta 1 sine theta 2. Hope you can see that. But now let's rearrange our terms. These two will not have an I involved once we replace this I squared with negative 1. So let's put these two terms first. So we still have r1 times r2. That's the product of those magnitudes. And next we'll have cosine theta 1 cosine theta 2. That takes care of this term. And I'm going to write this term next. So it's minus, because I'm replacing the I squared with negative 1, sine theta 1 sine theta 2. And now I have these two terms, and they'll come next. I have, as I write them, I'm going to factor out the I. So I will have I times cosine theta 1 sine theta 2 plus sine theta 1 cosine theta 2. Now I hope you can see all that. Let me adjust just a little bit. And I'm going to put parentheses around these two terms. That won't change the value of the expression. And now I want to point out this. This expression right here should look familiar. It's cosine of an angle times the cosine of a second angle minus the sine of the first angle times the sine of the second angle. I hope that looks familiar to you, and it looks like the cosine of the sum of two angles. So this would be r1, r2 times cosine theta 1 plus theta 2. Similarly, over here, that should look familiar as well. This is actually the sine of the sum of two angles. Sine of an angle, cosine of an angle, cosine of a second angle, and then the sine and cosines reverse with the other angles. And we get the sine of theta 1 plus theta 2. So here's our result. If you're multiplying two complex numbers in trig form, you multiply their arguments together and you will add their arguments. So I'm just going to give you one example. Let's do it. We're going to find the product Z1, Z2. And we're going to let Z1 equal 2 cosine 100 degrees plus I sine 100 degrees. And we're going to let Z2 equal 7 cosine 50 degrees plus I sine 50 degrees. So to find their product, we have Z1, Z2 equals, we take the product of their magnitude, so 2 times 7 is 14. And then we have cosine of the sum of those angles. 100 degrees plus 50 degrees is 150 degrees, plus I sine 150 degrees. And we have their product done, and it is in trig form. If you're wanting to change to rectangular form, let's continue and see how that would work. We're just going to make a substitution for cosine of 150 degrees and sine of 150 degrees. So we have 14 times cosine of 150 degrees. Notice we're in the second quadrant. So we have a negative square root of 3 over 2, right? Reference angle is 30 degrees there. Plus sine of 150 degrees. Again, reference angle is 30 degrees, but sine is positive in the second quadrant. So we have 1/2. So it's 1/2 I. So the product in rectangular form would look like this. We'll distribute the 14, and we have negative 7 square root of 3. Distribute the 14 here, and we have plus 7i. And there's their product in rectangular form.